In a corner forgotten by the French Pyrenees, a humble and fragile young woman changed the course of religious history forever. Lourdes, a town unknown until then, became the epicenter of one of the most moving and miraculous manifestations of the Christian faith. Here, in the midst of poverty and illness, Bernadette Soubirous was born and raised, a girl destined to witness the divine. Her life, marked by suffering and adversity, became a spiritual odyssey that would resonate in the hearts of millions of faithful around the world. Through her eyes, we will meet the lady, dressed in white, who entrusted her with a message of hope and salvation, a message that has gone through generations and continues to inspire all those who seek the consolation and peace of God. Prepare to immerse yourself in a story of unbreakable faith, surprising miracles, and a holiness lived in humility. Join us on this spiritual journey to discover how a simple girl, through her purity and devotion, became a candle of light and hope, whose flame continues to shine in the sanctuary of Lourdes. This is the story of Saint Bernadette Soubirous, a story that invites us to believe in the impossible and to find the divine in the simplest of life. Stay with us until the end and allow the grace and mystery of this saint to envelop us and bring us a little closer to the heart of God. Magi Bernadette Soubirous, affectionately known as Bernadette, was born on January 7, 1844 in Lourdes, a picturesque town located in the southwest of France, in the department of the High Pyrenees. She was born in the Molino de Boli, also known as the Moulin de Boli, a modest flour mill that belonged to her family. This mill, although small and humble, was the heart of the daily life of the Soubirous. Bernadette's parents, François Soubirous and Louis Castgot, were hardworking and devoted people. François was a miller who, despite his efforts, fought against constant poverty. Louis came from a family of millers and brought with him the dedication and strength necessary to face the difficulties of life. The union of François and Louis was a marriage based on love and faith, fundamental pillars that they transmitted to their children. Bernadette was the eldest of 9 brothers, although not all of them survived the harsh reality of life in the 19th century. Child mortality was high, and the Soubirous family was no exception. Despite the difficulties, the family was very united and found comfort in their faith and in the parish community of Lourdes. From an early age, Bernadette showed signs of a delicate health. At 2 years old, she contracted cholera during an epidemic that ravaged the region. Although she survived, this disease left consequences that affected her health throughout her life. She suffered from chronic asthma, which caused frequent respiratory difficulties. These ailments made her seem more fragile and small for her age, but also gave her an unusual serenity and maturity as a child. Bernadette's education was limited due to family circumstances. At a time when formal education was not accessible to everyone, especially in rural areas, Bernadette attended school sporadically. Despite this, her mother taught her the basic prayers and the Christian faith, which became a refuge and a guide in her life. The catechesis and religious teachings were an essential part of her education, something that Bernadette embraced with devotion. Lourdes, at that time, was a small agricultural town surrounded by mountains and nature. Life there was simple but hard. Families worked in the fields and in manual trades to make a living. The community was narrow and closely united by faith and religious traditions. The environment in which Bernadette grew up was impregnated with a spirituality that undoubtedly influenced her character and her willingness to accept the supernatural with a pure and unbreakable faith. The Soubirous family faced extremely difficult times. In 1854, the Molino de Boli, which had been a source of income, ceased to be profitable due to competition and the general economic situation. The family was forced to leave the mill and move to a damp and dark basement known as the Cacot, an old prison that had become a home for the poorest of Lourdes. This experience of extreme poverty and physical and moral suffering marked Bernadette deeply, who learned to find strength and comfort in prayer and in her faith. These first years of Bernadette Soubirous's life, marked by struggle, poverty, and illness, were fundamental to forge her resilient character and her deep spirituality. The humility and simplicity with which she accepted her destiny prepared her heart for the extraordinary events that were to come. In this initial stage, the flashes of holiness that would define her and make her a beacon of faith and hope for millions of people around the world were already shining. On February 11, 1858, a day that began like any other in the small town of Lourdes, became the starting point of a series of supernatural events that would change the life of Bernadette Soubirous and the history of Christianity. On that cold winter morning, Bernadette, her younger sister, Toinette, and a friend, Jean Abadie, decided to go out to collect firewood near the cave of Massabielle, a rocky and desolate place on the outskirts of the town. While her companions were crossing the Gave stream, Bernadette, who suffered from asthma and did not want to get her feet wet, stayed behind. At that moment, she heard a sound like a gust of wind, but the trees and the water were calm. When she looked up, she saw a luminous figure in a cavity of the rock. It was a young and beautiful lady, dressed in a white cloak, a blue belt, and a golden rose on each foot. The lady held a rosary in her hands and smiled kindly. Bernadette, frightened and amazed at the same time, made the sign of the cross and began to pray the rosary. The vision faded when the prayers were finished. On returning home, Bernadette told her mother what had happened, who initially reacted with disbelief and concern. However, Bernadette did not let herself be dissuaded, and, accompanied by Toinette and Jean, returned to the cave the next day. Between February and July of 1858, Bernadette experienced 18 apparitions of the lady. During these apparitions, the lady revealed deep messages and gave her specific instructions. In the third apparition, the lady spoke for the first time, saying, "Do you want to do me the favor of coming here for 15 days? Bernadette accepted humbly and obediently. In the following apparitions, the lady asked Bernadette to pray for the sinners, to do penance, and to kiss the ground in a sign of humility. On February 25th, during the 9th apparition, the lady asked her to dig in the ground and to drink from the fountain she found there. Bernadette obeyed, and although initially she only found a little muddy water, spring soon sprang up with strength and clarity. The spring discovered by Bernadette quickly became a focus of attention. The accounts of miraculous healings began to multiply, and the news spread beyond Lourdes. The crowds went to the place to see the young visionary and to drink or wash with the spring water, hoping to experience a divine healing. On March 25, 1858, during the 16th apparition, the lady finally revealed her identity. In response to Bernadette's insistence, who had been instructed by the parish of Lourdes to ask the name of the apparition, the lady said, "I am the Immaculate Conception." This statement confirmed to the Church the authenticity of Bernadette's visions, since the dogma of the Immaculate Conception had been proclaimed only 4 years earlier, in 1854, by Pope Pius IX. The last two apparitions occurred on April 7th and July 16th, 1858. In the apparition of April 7th, Bernadette had a deep mystical experience, during which she held a candle lit in her hand that was consumed completely without the flame burning it, a phenomenon witnessed by numerous witnesses. The last apparition, on July 16th, was a silent farewell, during which the lady appeared for the last time, confirming the end of the visions. These visions and the statements of Bernadette aroused various reactions. While many faithful believed and supported Bernadette, others, including ecclesiastical and civil authorities, were skeptical and hostile. Bernadette was subjected to numerous interrogations to verify the veracity of her experiences. However, her sincerity, coherence, and humility, along with the numerous miracles associated with the Menantial, led the Catholic Church to officially recognize the apparitions in 1862. After this recognition, Bernadette Soubirous faced a new stage in her life. The constant flow of pilgrims and public attention was overwhelming for the young visionary. In search of a spiritual retreat and a life dedicated completely to God, Bernadette entered the convent of the Sisters of Charity and the Christian Instruction of Nevers in 1866. At the age of 22, her farewell to Lourdes was moving, as she left behind the place of her visions and her family, but she did so with the certainty that it was the path that God had laid out for her. Upon entering the convent, she took the religious name of Sister Marie Bernard. Life in the convent of St. Gildard in Nevers was a period of humble service, intense prayer, and physical suffering for Bernadette. Despite her frail health, she participated in the community tasks with dedication and devotion. She played simple but significant roles, as an assistant at the Isocristana Infirmary, always with a deep attitude of humility and dedication. Bernadette's chronic asthma and the consequences of bone tuberculosis constantly troubled her. These diseases led her to spend long seasons in the convent infirmary. However, she never allowed her physical suffering to weaken her spirit. Her inner strength and her serene acceptance of pain were testimonies of her deep faith and confidence in the will of God. The Sisters of the Convent of Nevers were witnesses of Bernadette's exemplary life. Despite her fame as a visionary, Bernadette always remained humble and avoided any kind of prominence. When asked about the apparitions, she answered with simplicity and avoided any kind of vanity. Her life was centered on prayer and a deep love for Christ and the Virgin Mary. A notable aspect of her life in the convent was her devotion to the Rosary. Bernadette spent hours in prayer, finding in the prayer of the Rosary a spiritual refuge and a source of strength. She often said, "Praying to the Rosary is my greatest comfort." On April 16, 1879, after a long battle against her illness, Bernadette Soubirous died at the age of 35. Her last words were a supplication to the Virgin Mary. "Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for me, poor sinner." Her death was a moment of deep recollection and sadness for the convent community that had come to see her as an example of living holiness. Bernadette's body was buried in the convent of St. Gildar in Nevers. In 1909, during the first exhumation process, her body was found surprisingly well preserved, which was considered a sign of her holiness. Her incorrupt body was placed in a crystal reliquary in the convent chapel, where it remains to this day, attracting thousands of pilgrims seeking inspiration and spiritual comfort. Bernadette's life and virtues were officially recognized by the Catholic Church when she was beatified by Pope Pius X in 1925. Subsequently, on December 8, 1933, Pope Pius XI canonized her, proclaiming her Saint Bernadette Soubirous. This recognition was a confirmation of her life of humility, suffering, and devotion. Bernadette's canonization elevated her history of faith to a universal level, turning it into a model of holiness for the faithful of the whole world. Her simple life, marked by her obedience and trust in God, profoundly resonates in those who seek a genuine faith and an example of total dedication to the divine service. The life of Saint Bernadette Soubirous has left a lasting legacy that resonates profoundly both in the Catholic Church and in the hearts of the faithful of the whole world. Her history of humility, faith, and obedience to the divine will not only mark her time, but has continued to inspire and transform lives to this day. After her death, the influence of Saint Bernadette spread rapidly. Lourdes became one of the main places of pilgrimage in the Christian world. The spring of water that Bernadette discovered in the cave of Massabile has been a source of innumerable healings and miracles, and every year millions of pilgrims travel to Lourdes in search of physical and spiritual healing. This constant flow of pilgrims is a testimony of the lasting power of faith and the intercession of Bernadette. The sanctuary of Our Lady of Lourdes, built in the place of the apparitions, has become a center of Marian devotion and a symbol of divine grace that flows to those who seek with faith and humility. The processions, masses, and daily ceremonies in Lourdes reflect the vibrant spiritual life emanating from Bernadette's experiences. For believers, the life of Saint Bernadette offers a powerful example of how to live a life of faith in the midst of adversity. Her humility and acceptance of suffering show that true spiritual greatness is not measured by material success or the absence of problems, but by the ability to find God in every moment and situation of life. Bernadette shows us that holiness is within everyone's reach, regardless of our personal circumstances. In the contemporary world where many face health, economic, and spiritual challenges, Bernadette's story remains relevant and comforting. Her experiences remind us that God is close to the humble and that His love and mercy are available to all. In an era marked by uncertainty, the message of Lourdes and Bernadette's life offer hope and a call to conversion and prayer. The numerous healings and miracles reported in Lourdes continue to reaffirm the faith of millions of people. These testimonies of faith and healing are a constant reminder of the active presence of God in our world and of the powerful intercession of the Virgin Mary and of Saint Bernadette. The legacy of Saint Bernadette invites us to live our lives with a renewed faith and a profound commitment to Christian values. It calls us to seek God's will in every circumstance, to be humble in our successes and persevering in our trials. Through her example, we are encouraged to trust in divine providence and to find strength in prayer and the community of faith. Dear brothers and sisters, your support is vital so that we can continue to share these inspiring stories of faith and devotion. We invite you to subscribe to our channel, activate notifications, and share our content with your friends and family. Your participation allows us to continue spreading the message of love and hope of our saints. Thank you for your fidelity and constant support. May the intercession of Saint Bernadette and the blessing of the Virgin Mary always accompany you. May God bless you. See you in the next episode of Sancta Sanctorum.